Hello, I'm Robert, and you're welcome here in my busy little shop. What's on the workbench today? Blue. Yep, blue leather. Now, if this color is not yours, you can apply this same process to a multitude of colors. This Vaqueta leather is in 6 colors, and I'm working through the colors, seeing what I can come up with. Today's color is blue. Let's get on the bench and see what we can come up with. Okay, so what are we going to do with this blue leather? I've got this beautiful buckle I purchased from Montana Leather, and I like it because it's got some engraving in it, and I think it'll go really well. So my plan on this is to cut a blue strip out of this leather. I'm going to line it with some Sapichi vegetable tan leather natural. I purchased this through Montana Leather as well, and I'll make a 2-layer belt. So let me cut the straps out and we'll go from there. Okay, I've cut a 1.5 inch strip of blue, and I have some Sapichi leather that I got from Montana Leather as well, and that's what we're going to laminate it to. And we're going to end up with about 11-ounce belt here, which is just going to be perfect. To get started, I don't need to thin down the back of this blue, because this blue is 2 to 3 ounce. But what I will need to do is thin down the back of the liner. And I'm going to go with a natural liner. It's going to stay natural all the way through. I'll oil this all at one point, and that'll include the back. So on this one, I do this a little bit different than some of my belts. On this one, we're going to be laminating them together. It's going to be the first step. So let me jump over my splitter and we'll get this split down. If you're like me, every once in a while I look up and I wonder who comes in my shop and leaves it a mess. I mean, really, what are we going to do with that? It goes in the trash. Put it in the trash. So I've got the liner skived down, and the liner is going to go on here, and I'm making a 38-inch belt. And so all I need is 48 inches worth of leather. And we're in pretty good shape. There's a little bit of a scuff here. Let me cut that off. So I create my belts with, it's easy math. Just add 10 inches to the length of the belt. And like I said, we're going to make a 38-inch belt. You know what? I'm going to make this a 40-inch belt. You're right. It's just for display. So whatever size works for somebody. So I'm going to make this as a 40. So I need 50-inch strap. I needed 50 inches, and I cut this to 50 3/4. That'll give me room to trim my English point once we've got it laminated. So let's get the contact adhesive out and get this belt layered up. Some of my videos have been a little bit long-winded with detail. I'm not going to cover a whole lot of extra detail on this. It's pretty straightforward. So this should be abbreviated. I know I've promised that before, and it still is 30 minutes, but we're going to see if we can get this done in a 15-minute video. Should be able to get that. And if you're curious, I use Weldwood contact adhesive, and I put 2 coats on. So I really work this near side to me pretty well, and when I flip it around, I'll really make sure I get the other side good as well. Once I get the 2 layers laminated together, we can sand the edges. So if I get a little bit of contact adhesive over the edge, it should be okay. I should be able to sand that off, but I try not to get too much on it, and the next thing you know, you have it on the front of it. So I'm not going to bore you with watching all of this brushing on of contact adhesive. I'll come back when we're ready to laminate these 2 together. Sides are tacky, but not wet. It's time now to laminate this belt together. She wants to stick. And we'll just work our way down the belt here. next step I need to do, I need to sand the edges, but that can wait a little while. I want that contact adhesive to set up, you know, as much as possible before I start doing it so it doesn't gum up the sanding wheel on it. Let me define this end here, and that means cut it to shape for me. Okay. And we'll cut this to length now. All right, belt's done. Oh, I'm kidding. So I measured in 3.5 inches. That'll be the center of the oblong hole. Easy for you to say. And it's going to go on there like that. So with that folded here, I want to identify the center of the belt. I want to know where the middle of the back is going to be on the person wearing it. And since I'm going 40 inches, that'd be 20. 20 inches here. A very faint pencil mark here. All right. Now, when we create the holes for this, I'm going to make this one as a 7-hole belt. A lot of times I do 5, but on a 40 and above, a lot of times I'll do 7. So I'm going to just do a light mark. So we got the 40, which is the center, and then 39, 38, and 37. And then it'll go to 43. The reason why I want to identify that is I'm putting a pattern on here, and I don't want to encroach on these belt loopholes. My pattern is going to start back from that, probably about 2 inches. So just double check my math here. So from the center of the belt, 20, yep, 20 to there. So I'm going to say I'm going to go with 15. So I need 15 on each side of the belt. I don't know if you can see them or not, but I've marked those, and they're 30 inches apart. So the pattern is going to start here and go all the way around to there. So I need to case this a bit. And I case the whole thing, even where I'm not working, in case it affects the look of it. And for this pattern, I need to locate the center of the belt. Scribe it. I'm going to scribe from one end to the other. I wanted to show you this. I created this. It was on one of my short videos, and I had some people say, well, there's really no color there. And I just had a hard time that day getting lighting to really show it. So you can see this is the same diamond pattern I'm going to do on here. I did turquoise on this one, on the black. I think it actually looks pretty good. I just kind of playing around with just different ways to create interest on a belt. I'm going to use black antiquing on top of this blue belt. And I think that will help tie into the buckle here of the black antique on this. I'm going to start what I think is one stamp short of there, of the end. The reason why I didn't want to go further is, well, mainly I want to make sure I didn't put this scribe line past it. It would show out here, so I don't want that to show. And I'm just going to work my way down the belt here. And I probably take more time on this first row than the next ones because I'm kind of filling in then the spot. So I want to make sure I don't like overlap this diamond because it'll throw everything off down through here. Go to my 24 ounce. I'm going to work all the way to the other end, and then I'll come back in a little bit here. I think it'll go fairly quick, but when I'm ready to put the next row on here, I'll talk a little bit about that at that point. I did run a wet sponge or a damp sponge over here to add a little more moisture to it. Now I'm coming back for my second pass. And I want to say, this is my advice anyway. What works best for me is I work on the away side. I try not to fill in over here, leaning over, looking. I'll work this side of it, and then I'll come back and flip the belt over and work the other side of the belt. And, you know, obviously keeping a pattern like this from getting tweaked is a challenge. And, you know, I wouldn't want to do like a whole book cover with this because I don't think you could keep it straight. I suppose if you scribed lines about each time and kind of went off the lines and ignored the previous row, I'm too much of a perfectionist, and this is enough of a challenge for me being a perfectionist. And I'll just work down through here, and instead of spending a lot of time looking at this tip over here and this tip over here, I just look at the middle point here and try to equal on both sides. I think that makes sense. And that one, I ended up stepping on it. The other thing that I do is I try to kind of like push up here just a little bit away from that other pattern. And like I said, as a perfectionist, this is a little bit of a challenge. But I think it ends up looking pretty good. And most people aren't going to look at the pattern that closely to pick it apart. If they are, they know what they're going to be seeing. So I'm going to continue down here. Well, you know what? Let me just hop back over here, and then I'll come back and do the same thing. And I work from the middle out just to keep it centered on the belt strip. So I'll finish down this side here, and I'll flip it around, complete the other side, and I'll probably have, I don't know, 20 minutes in this belt by the time I'm done. So I'll be back with you here in just a little bit. We'll be ready for the next step. All right, so I let the leather dry out from the casing, and then I oiled the leather with some Fiebing's neat's foot oil, and now I'm applying the Fiebing's black antique finish here. And you're going to ask if I added a resist, and I didn't. And I completed a couple of tests, and my goal was to highlight the diamonds, obviously, but also to tone down the brightness of the blue just a little bit on this belt. So we'll let this sit for a couple of minutes, and then I will buff this out. See what we've got. I've often wondered, has anybody tried just shoe polish to antique the leather? I'm curious as to the viability of that. Maybe someone's got some feedback for me. I guess I could try it myself, but I'd like to hear what kind of experience other people have had. Let's see how they look together. So this was the blue that I started with. So yeah, it's put it more in a royal blue family here. So I'm going to let the antique finish dry. I'm going to let it sit for like 12 hours, and then I'm going to come back and we'll be ready for the next step. All right, we're moving along. So pattern's not perfect, but I think it looks pretty good. And you know, most people are going to be, you know, seeing it from a distance, not up close like this. So I finished the glaze, and I went ahead and put one coat of Resin on the front here to seal it up, mainly so I'm not moving color onto the back. And we've got a couple little smudges here. I'll scuff sand that. Most of that I think will come off when I get down to my final finish. I'll do that. So now I need to get it ready for the hand sewing. So I'm using my groover, and I'll just put a groove down through here. I'll follow that with my stitching chisel, and I don't know if I said it or not, but I'm going to be using black thread on this. I think that'll further draw attention to the black design on here. So I'm starting here at the tip, and I'll work my way around the curve using the 2-tine chisel. And when I get on the straightaway here, I'll move to the 6-tine. So I'm using a 6-tine here on the straightaway, and it's easy just to place it in the groove. If you keep this angle the same, then your stitches on the back will be the same. Now, I'm stating the obvious, I know that, and it took a lot of belts before my back line was what I would call straight enough. So my point of that is, it takes practice. So I will continue around here. When I get to the buckle end of the belt, then I come back to the tip and work down that way. In my opinion, doing that keeps your spacing the best, and any adjustments are made on the fold over part of the belt where you're not going to see that. So when I get that done, I'll come back for the next step. So here's where we're at so far. I've got all the holes in, and I've started stitching, and I think this black thread looks really nice with this diamond pattern, and I think that the black antique finish really sets that off. I think it looks pretty good. I haven't finished the edges yet. I like to do that after stitching, because once in a while I notice that if I do it beforehand, maybe I get a little bit of pucker along this edge here. So if I install my stitches and then cut and finish my edges, I get a cleaner, truer edge on there. And I'm using a waxed braided thread, 0.08, and this, I think I said earlier, it's in black. And I'm just doing a traditional saddle stitch here using 2 John James needles. So I think the belt's coming together pretty well here. Once I finish my stitching, the next step will be to cut and round my edges, put a burnish on those. I've got a couple of spots on the back of the belt here where I've got a little smudge. I'll clean that off, and then it'll be ready to put a clear finish on there. But I'll come back when we're ready to work on our edge and our edge finishes here. So we finished our stitching. I think that came out nice. Now it's time to do the edge finish on here. I'm using a number 3 Ron's edger, and I don't know if I said it, but I did sand the edges clean with each other. And I'll finish this edging work, and then we will get a nice burnish on here. Just a little bit of water here and friction. Got a nice sheen to it. So I'll work my way around the belt here, And the next step will be a finish coat of Resling. Shoot, I need to make my keeper, and I get that done, and this belt is all but finished. So I'll finish this burnish, and then I'll come back when we're ready to put Resling on there. I think it's looking pretty good. I've got the edges burnished. Next, I need to tap down these threads. I find that doing so, and it's harder to see with these black stitches, but it sets the stitches down a little bit below the surface. I think that helps minimize wear on the threads, and it helps clean up any slight puckering around the holes. So I'll do that, and then we're going to apply Resling. Someone asked me about how I maintain my Resling, and I have these containers, and I like them because they have this raised panel on the bottom. I think these were lunch meat came in them or something like that. So it creates this trough around here, and when I keep my sponge in there, it's raised up off the bottom. And when I fill Resling in here, I don't put any more in than will fit below that lip in there. And by doing that, the sponge doesn't soak it all up. Because if it's all soaked up, then you squeeze it out. Now it's all foam, and you're fighting more foam than you need to. This way allows me to just dab in here a little bit, get it on the sponge, and apply it to the belt. And I make sure to get the threads sealed well and the edges here. And then someone asked me how often I have to replace the sponge. I've been using this sponge, I think for, I don't want to exaggerate, but I think I've been using the same sponge for a year. Whenever I get, when it works out that I get the containers empty and I'm not in the middle of a belt, then I go ahead and wash the sponge out with water and then set it back inside there. And then I'm in the Resling, you know, on a weekly basis, and I don't find that it dries out. It gets a little crusty around the edges of the container, so it's probably, you know, once a month that I clean out that container. Anyway, it's a tip that I came up with, and it works very well for me. Hope it works well for you if you give it a try. I think it's looking decent. We'll let that dry, and we'll be back to create the loop. You know, it's just a simple loop. I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. And really, we're ready for final assembly. All right, we're getting down here to brass tacks. So what I did was I created the loop here. This will become the loop out of 2 layers of the blue Vaqueta leather. I apologize if I pronounce it different each time. I struggle. I keep saying I think the hardest thing about this leather is for me to pronounce the name of it. But 2 layers, I laminated those together. I created the stitching line here, the accent, so it'll be the same as the belt. And I need to put now some Resling on here. And I did treat this leather the same as the belt, meaning that I oiled it and then I put the antique finish on it so it had the same tone. All right, I'm set up here. We've got everything we need to finish the assembly of the belt. I need to create a slot for the buckle. And I said earlier, I like to come in 3.5 inches for that. So I'll mark my 3.5 inches in spot. I like to create 2 parallel lines. That helps me to get my bag punch set in there correctly. You would think it would be pretty easy just to, you know, set it on there and get it squared up, but I've had it tipped so many times that I started creating 2 lines. So I've got my middle mark and I just line up on that. like this, and then I check myself against the 2 parallel lines, and we're good to go here. The next thing I need to do is to, and I will say, if you have this tipped a little bit, it's more obvious when it's laid out like this, but less obvious when you get it folded over. So now I need to create holes for my Chicago screws. I always start with those two, then I fold this over. And mark that one. And this one. I'll do my checking points here to make sure I'm lined up in the center. We are finishing this up in a hurry. I'll just say that this leather is, I find, easy to work with. I like the selection of colors. I've worked through almost all 6 colors at this point with different projects, and I've been enjoying using it. The edge burnishes nice as well, so that's important to me to have a good finish on it. So let's... I put a dab of clear fingernail polish on my Chicago screws to keep them from backing out. I was surprised. People had told me that they would back out if you don't. People are right. And I just didn't think it would if you get them tight, but they do. I've said before I like to line up the screws on these the same. I'll slide my loop on here now. And if I'm making the belt for somebody, I've put initials on here before. I've put sizes on there. But if I'm not making it for anybody specific, then I will go ahead and I'll put the size on here. It makes it easier for me when I'm digging through looking for one. And this is a 40-inch belt. I was gifted these. That's what I use for my numbers. Try to get these faced the right way. Okay, the last thing is for the adjustment holes. And we're doing this as a 40-inch belt. And I said I was going to do 7 adjustment holes, so it's a 40 plus 3 and a 40 minus 3. And instead of trying to, measure to the center, I just use my tool here to find the same distance to find the middle. And lickety split, we're about done here. I think I said earlier, but typically on a belt that's over 40 inches, I ask the person I'm making it for Do they want just 5 holes or do they want 7? And since I don't know who this is for, I went ahead and made it 7. If I do 38 and less, I typically do 5 unless somebody wants something different. Let's do our dry fit, see how she looks. Oh yeah. Wow, that's really nice. I like that buckle there. And it's not a terribly expensive buckle. I'm trying to remember. I think it's like $5 for that buckle or $4 for that buckle. And they have a couple different colors. Let's turn the camera around. We'll talk a little bit about this. I probably need more light so you can see the blue, but I tell you what, I think that's a beautiful belt. I'm gonna hate sending that up to Montana to have on display. Well, there you go. I think the belt came out really fabulous. The color's nice. You know, when you look at some of the colors needed to make some of these specialty belts, you know, buying the dye for it and all of that, you can go that route. I think this is pretty handy to have the leather pre-dyed. Vaqueta, probably saying it wrong. The leather has been really easy to work with. This blue, I could have made it out of a thicker top coat. I don't know why I got cut in this one. Then I'm like, you know, I've got it an 8 to 9 ounce, so I could have lined it with a lighter weight interior leather, but it's the same result. I'm happy with how it came out. If the colors aren't your combinations, you could do just any number of combinations, but I think it's a beautiful belt, easy to do. You could leave the design out and just make a blue belt if that's what you're wanting. I call that the classic belt. I like the buckle. I'm gonna have to get me some more of these buckles. And enough said. Please like, share, and subscribe. More importantly, I hope you have a great day.